Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Han and I'm a hand embroidery artist. In today's video, I'm gonna cover 10 hand embroidery hacks that you absolutely have to know. Whether you're a total beginner or an intermediate hand embroidery artist, you might learn something super useful from this video, so let's hop right into hack number 1. The first embroidery hack I have for you is to split your thread. Embroidery floss comes packaged in one thick strand that can be split off into 6 individual strands, and you'll see me split this thread in all of my tutorials on my channel. Sometimes I need 2 strands of thread, other times I'll need 3. It depends on the design and what I'm stitching exactly, but stitching with a lower strand count is always going to end up with a much neater and daintier finished product. If you want to stitch some really tiny flowers, for example, or some dainty leaves, I always recommend using 2 to 3 strands rather than trying to stitch with the really bulky clumped together 6 strands of thread. This is actually one of the most common mistakes I see beginner embroidery artists making. If you're ever scrolling Pinterest or Instagram and you find an image of a super intricate, delicate looking embroidery piece, I can almost guarantee that the artist didn't use thread counts over 3 strands of thread. The second embroidery hack I have for you is to store your thread on clothespins. These are also called clothes pegs in other places of the world, but I find this to be a really efficient, aesthetic way to store my embroidery thread, and it's a really similar thread storage technique to just winding your thread around those plastic bobbins that come in a lot of thread packages. This way I think is a little more aesthetic, but you still get the organization that you need, especially if you have a large, extensive embroidery thread collection. I also love that you can really easily write the thread number on the clothes pegs. Once you've wound your thread onto them, it just helps add a little bit of extra organization. The third embroidery hack I have for you is to use embroidery markers or fine line pencils. Both of these can be used to mark out designs, names, or dates that you want to put on whatever it is you're embroidering. I always recommend this water-soluble embroidery marker because it's really forgiving and you can mark out an entire design, and if you for some reason decide that you don't like the design, you can just go in and spritz it with some water and it will all disappear. So if you're a beginner or if you're just a little bit indecisive, I think an erasable embroidery marker would be perfect for you for mapping out designs onto shoes, onto jeans. The only thing to keep in mind is that you might need a lighter colored marker if you are planning to embroider onto something that has dark material. I often opt to use a fine line pencil, especially when I'm embroidering something small or I know exactly where I want something to go, but I just need a small guide for where I make my very first stitch or something like that. I like to use this fine line pencil because I don't always have something to erase. The erasable marker is great if I'm marking out a more complex design, but if I'm just making a circle or something I know I will definitely cover with my embroidery stitches, I do like to use the fine line pencil. The fourth embroidery hack I have for you is to tuck your thread on your way to your next stitching area. Tucking your thread among some of the inner stitches or the inner fabric of whatever it is you're embroidering will definitely save you some time, and ultimately it'll make your embroidery much less likely to fray on the inside, since there will be less knots on the inside of whatever it is you're stitching and more continuous thread, but it'll still be neat since you will have tucked your thread on your way to your next location. The fifth embroidery hack I have for you is to make sure you use finger protectors. I don't care what it is you're embroidering, finger protectors will make your life easier. I use them in every single one of my embroidery tutorials here on YouTube. They come in a bunch of different materials. I like these silicone ones, they're super easy to pop on and they give me a bit of extra grip when I pull the needle through whatever it is I'm stitching. I didn't use these for years when I first started embroidering shoes and I regret it. My fingers are still a little scarred to this day because embroidering on thicker fabric like shoes can be so hard on the skin on your fingers, so be kind to yourself and use some finger protectors. The sixth embroidery hack I have for you is you don't always have to use an embroidery hoop. Some projects definitely do become easier if you use an embroidery hoop. For example, embroidering onto a jean pocket can help create a little bit of separation between the 2 bits of fabric, but if you're just embroidering 1 or 2 small things, maybe you're doing 1 flower on the back of some jeans, or you want to add a small embellishment to a kitchen towel, you don't always have to add an embroidery hoop. It can be an unnecessary step, especially if the design you want to embroider is very simple. The seventh embroidery hack I have for you is to use beeswax or lip balm on your thread. This might sound a little bit weird, but this can keep your embroidery thread glossy and smooth, and that will help it move through the fabric of whatever it is you're stitching. And I especially love this hack for when I'm stitching names or dates, things that need to be really easily legible. And I often find that darker colored threads like black thread can become a little bit fluffy, especially after you've been stitching with the same piece of thread for a while. Using beeswax or lip balm can kind of condition the thread and you'll end up with a really polished, finished bit of embroidery. You can actually get thread wax for this exact purpose purpose. I actually ran out the day that I was finishing this embroidery for Mother's Day, and I used some old unscented uncolored lip balm that I had, and it worked perfectly. It actually almost worked better than the beeswax that I usually order. So if you do have some lip balm like this lying around, you can actually use it to condition your thread. The 8th embroidery hack that I have for you is to tuck away any laces or pockets, basically anything that you could accidentally embroider through on whatever it is you are stitching. So when I embroider onto shoes, I always tuck the laces out of the way, tuck the tongue of the shoes out of the way, because I know firsthand how annoying it can be to accidentally embroider onto some laces or accidentally embroider through the top of the tongue of the shoe and then have to undo a bunch of stitches. It is so annoying and it's really easily avoided. I actually recommend just completely delacing the shoes if you are planning a shoe embroidery project. If you're doing an embroidery project on a pair of jeans, for example, tuck away any of the inner pockets, anything that might get in the way that you might accidentally embroider through, because it can be so annoying to have to go back and correct that mistake. The 9th embroidery hack I have for you is to use pin cushions and needle minders whenever you are actively working on an embroidery project. I often like to embroider on my couch. I sometimes embroider in bed at the end of the day, and the sheer panic that races through me when I think that I might have lost a needle in bed is unmatched. I do not recommend it. I always advise having some kind of pin cushion lying around so you can just pop your needle in it when you're not embroidering. Magnetic needle minders are also great for this. You need either a pin cushion or a needle minder or both. Just invest in both and save your feet, please. The 10th and last embroidery hack that I have for you is to take a break and pet a really cute dog. While the dog is not essential for this 10th embroidery hack, taking breaks and pacing yourself with whatever embroidery project that you're doing is 100% essential. Try to pace yourself and don't rush whatever project it is you're working on. It's really easy to accidentally injure your fingers in this craft. I've known people to pull muscles in their hands from pushing themselves too hard and embroidering far too much in one day. So don't bite off more than you can chew and be really kind to yourself, especially if you're a beginner just getting into this craft. Take breaks and just really enjoy the process of embroidery. Okay friends, those were my 10 must-know hand embroidery hacks. I really hope that this was a bit informative and maybe you found a hack that you will put into practice this week. I make a bunch of beginner-friendly hand embroidery tutorials on my channel, so if you're looking for a new embroidery project to take on, go and have a browse and see if anything catches your eye. I would absolutely love to see what you create. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like and maybe comment below what your favorite hack was. If you like embroidery related content and beginner-friendly tutorials, I'd consider subscribing to this channel. I try and post a couple times a week and I have a few really fun videos coming up soon, and I would really hate for you to miss them. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video.